Okay, I'm here with Ben Rossett, the designer of Mars Needs Mechanics, and we've got here a little sneak peek of the special Kickstarter board that was handmade by John Sizemore of Nevermore Games. You can see it's got metal bolts and all kinds of metal and cool stuff, and these metal nuts and bolts here in the middle. But Ben is going to go ahead and explain a little bit of how this game works, and then we'll go from there.
Thanks, Joel.
Yep.
In Mars Needs Mechanics, the players are Aether engineers in 19th century Britain who are competing to win the job of Royal Astronautical Engineer on board the spaceship to Mars. And in order to win the job, they're going to have to prove their mettle to the Royal Academy of Space Exploration. They're going to have to prove their timing, their resourcefulness, and their ingenuity in order to earn the most cogs by the end of the game. So players will begin the game with 30 cogs each. These are the cogs that come in the game. They're the currency that players use, as well as then the victory condition. We have 10 cog, 5 cog, and 1 cog pieces. So each player will start the game with 30 cogs and 2 pieces of scrap metal here. Mars Needs Mechanics is played in rounds. There are 7 different types of components that are used in the game. These are the components that players are going to be buying and selling in order to try to maximize the value of those components in order to earn the most cogs. The game is played over a number of rounds, and this components deck right here has 8 copies of each of these 7 components in it. So this is a 56 card deck. So the first thing that I'm going to do at the start of the game is I'm going to flip over randomly 8 cards from the top of this deck. I'm going to put them face up below the board in a line, and this is going to be known as the component markets. So this is what the Academy is offering the players for use during the first round of the game. As you can see, we got a couple copies of magnets that came out, a couple copies of boiler, 8 total cards. Now, on a player's turn, they take one primary action. They either purchase one component from this component market at its current value. All components start the game at a value of 5, or they pass. That is the primary action that a player does on their turn. They always do one of those 2 things. If a player passes, they are only passing for that turn and not for the entire round. So if David here to my left, if he passes, and then I purchase something on my turn, when it comes back around to David, he can get back in and purchase something on his turn. He hasn't passed for the entire game. So Mars Needs Mechanics is a set collection game and an economic set collection game, but more than anything, it is a timing game. So more than what you buy, it's when you buy it that's going to determine how successful you are. When you purchase something from the market, for instance, if David purchased this magnet, he would pay for that magnet from his cog supply, so he would pay 5 and take his change. He would add the magnet to his hand of component cards, and then very importantly, he would take the magnet token from this sales order line and he would move it to the front of the line. Then on my turn, if I wanted to purchase, for instance, this boiler, I would again pay for it from my cog supply, add it to my hand, and then I would take the boiler token and move that all the way to the front of the line, even if there are gaps in the line. So I'll take the boiler, move it all the way to the front of the line. On Joel's turn, if he decides to buy a wire, then the wire token would come and move all the way to the front of the line. So we are going to continue taking turns, either purchasing one component at its current value or passing until one of 2 things happens. Either all of the cards in the market will be purchased, or all players will consecutively pass. So remember I said when you pass, you can get back in on your next turn, unless all players consecutively pass after you, and that will end the round.
Okay.
Now at the end of the round, we do a couple of quick steps. The most important thing is that we adjust the value of components based on this sales order line purchase order. This is the economic engine that drives the game. The player that wins is the player that can most successfully manipulate this sales order line to make it look the way they want it to look at the end of each round, such that the components that they want to rise in value go up and the components they want to fall in value go down. Of course, all players are simultaneously trying to manipulate this line to their advantage. So what we're going to do is at the end of the round, we're going to find the 3 components that are at the back of the line. Right now that is Aether Tube, lenses, and gears. Those 3 slide into these -1 spots here at the back of this board, and their value goes down by 1. The component in the middle, which right now is piping, slides into this 0 spot. Its price does not change. And the 3 components at the front of the line slide into these +1 spots, and their value goes up by 1. Only now, after prices have changed, do players have the opportunity to sell sets of components from their hand. A set is defined as 3 or more of the same type of component. 3 wire or 4 Aether Tube or 5 magnets, etc.
Right.
So players can trade in if Joel has a set of 3 magnets that he wants to sell now. Magnets have a value of 6, so he'll sell a set of 3 magnets for 18 cogs, and he'll take 18 cogs from the bank.
All right.
That's the general game, and we will play a number of rounds until this component deck runs out. There are also these mechanisms which can be built. These are different ship contraptions that the players build to impress the committee that they know how to build and maintain the different parts of the ship. So on a player's turn, in addition to either purchasing or passing, which is the main action that a player takes, they can also build and break down one of these mechanisms. For instance, if a player has a boiler and a scrap that's in their hand, on their turn they can build the rocket booster, which requires a boiler and a piece of scrap. They would then place that boiler and scrap down on the table in front of them, and they have now built the rocket booster, and it begins to function for them as soon as they've built it. And they receive the benefit of the rocket booster, which says receive 1 extra cog for each set that you sell.
All right.
If a player later decides that one of the other mechanisms would really benefit them more at this point, they can break down the mechanism they currently have built by just picking up the components and placing them back into the player's hand. They don't lose the components, and then they can put down new components to build a new mechanism.
All right.
So if this was my hand and I broke down the rocket booster by taking the components back into my hand, I could then build instead the difference engine, which requires piping and gears. And now the difference engine begins to function for me, and I receive its benefit.
Okay.
So these mechanisms are situational. They give the players a little added boost or advantage just when they need it. But the main engine of the game, again, is this sales order line, which controls the prices of the goods, components that are changing every round of the game.
Okay.
The player with the most cogs at the end of the game wins.
Thanks, Ben. So more than one player can build the same contraption?
Yes, more
Okay.
than one player can build the same mechanism at the same time,
Okay.
but each player can only have 1 active mechanism.
Okay.
So you cannot have the
Right.
difference engine and the rocket booster built at the same time. You can only have 1.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.